Okay, so we are going to start 31, and this chapter covers poisoning, toxic effects, adverse effects, and underdosing of drugs. So a couple of different things here. These are going to be T codes again, and a certain combination codes sometimes specify both a responsible substance and whether it's a poisoning. We do have an adverse effect underdosing. And with these, you can see here that our fifth or sixth character will specify if it's poisoning, accidental, intentional self-harm, and poisoning assault. We'll talk about that coming up, and poisoning undetermined. 5 is adverse effect, and 6 is underdosing. So what I need everybody to do now is go to the section in your book, because what I want you to do is, again, we're looking for the tabular section for poisoning, okay, which is going to be right here in drugs. So again, put a sticky tab on that so you know where it's at. It's easy to find. And you can see here we have poisoning accidental, everything that I just went through. So again, I know my book's electronic, but go ahead in your paper copy book and look for the section that states drugs. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint then. Okay, so a couple of different things here. We have toxic effects. These are T5-1 through 6-5. And the same thing, we have our last 7 characters, A, D, and S, which we've been utilizing so far this whole semester. Okay, so a couple of different things. How did we distinguish between adverse effects and poisoning? All right, so if the correct substance is administered as prescribed, then it's an adverse effect. Okay, so that's pretty easy. So if you're taking medication, the doctor gave you the medication, and you break out in a rash for it, that would be an adverse effect. Now, if the substance is used incorrectly, okay, if you take too much of it, that's considered a poisoning. So again, it depends, intentionally or exactly what happened. So we'll go through a few scenarios of that. So sometimes a patient uses prescribed medication less frequently than they're supposed to, smaller amounts. This would be underdosing. So you do not code this as poisoning. A couple of different examples. Sometimes people take blood pressure medicine and they start feeling better, and they just decrease their dose on their own. Okay, and then at that point their blood pressure goes up. So if they're coming in, you would go ahead and code that as underdosing. So now when the drug is correctly prescribed, properly administered, okay, so you would sequence the nature of the adverse effect first. Okay, so if I was given, let's just say, amoxicillin, and I broke out in a rash, so with this, I would make sure that the rash is coded first, and then my adverse effect code would be, again, second. So if I go back to the code book here, and I want everybody to be in the drug section. If you need to pause the tape, and we're going to look for the drug amoxicillin. Okay, so once you get to it, again, it's going to be the adverse effect code T36.0X5. Keep in mind that this is going to need a 5th digit. Okay, so was it the first time initial encounter this happened? Okay, so the other thing is here, then you have to go back to your diagnosis section, and let's just say that we had a rash. Okay, and I'm just going to go with just the plain, we're not going to say internal use, we're just going to go right to, we have a rash. Okay, I guess we'll go to internal use of the drug, L27.0. Okay, with this code here, this needs to go first. Okay, with adverse effect, you code again, what is wrong with the patient first. Then you're going to use the T code, and look at here, it does say use additional code for adverse effect. So my L code's first, and then I'm going to go to my T code second, adverse effect. All right, so then when we're talking about poisoning, so when the condition results from the interaction of 2 or more therapeutic drugs, these are still an adverse effect. So each table is coded individually unless there's a combination code. Okay, so again, the doctor prescribes 2 medications and you have an adverse effect from it. Okay, so again, you code whatever is wrong with you first, whether, if you have a rash or it makes you really sleepy, anything like that, that's going to be coded first. And then you're going to code adverse effect of each drug that you were taking. Now, coding poisonings is a little bit different. With poisoning, the T code poisoning is first, and then anything else that is happening would be second. Okay, so when there's no intent of the poisoning is indicated, then you would sign the code for accidental poisoning. Okay, so also we have a diagnosis of use of the substance. This would also be coded if they're, with the poisoning. Okay, so adverse effects of therapeutic substance. Adverse effects of therapeutic, that would be your synergistic reaction, side effect, idiosyncratic reaction. These can be a lot of things. Patient's age, their sex, disease, any of that above. Okay, so again, FYI, all of these here terms are reported as an adverse effect. So we have allergic reaction, cumulative effect of a drug, hypersensitivity. So all of these, again, adverse effect. Okay, so let's go to poisoning. A couple of different things. When do we code poisoning? So the wrong medication was given or taken, an error was made in the drug prescription, the wrong dosage was given or taken, unless it's underdosing, intentional overdose, and a non-prescribed drug taken with a correctly prescribed drug and properly administered drugs. So if you are mixing, let's just say Coumadin with aspirin that you decide to do, and again, at that point, you don't want to mix those 2 drugs unless the doctor tells you to do so. This would be a poisoning. The poisoning drug, again, the T code is going to be first, and then whatever is wrong with the patient is going to be second. Couple of different things here. We have a coma due to adverse reaction of Valium taken correctly, but the patient had 2 martinis. Okay, one thing, whenever you mix alcohol to any type of prescription drug, it's automatically poisoning. So with that, we need a poisoning code for the alcohol, a poisoning code for the Valium, and then if the patient went into a coma, that's going to be our 3rd code. So when we go back to the coding book itself, okay, so you're going to look up, I'm in the drug section, and I'm just going to look up alcohol. Again, make sure everyone's in the tabular list. Okay, and we're going to just say that it is beverage. So with that, it's unintentional. So it's going to be T51.0x1. Okay, and then you're going to also look up Valium, which again, unintentional. All right. So as I stated here before, we have intentional self-harm. So if somebody's trying to commit suicide, takes an overdose of drugs, this is what you're going to code. Poisoning assault, we like to state that this would be if somebody slipped a person some type of drug and that patient had a reaction to it. That would be assault, like a date rape drug. We don't like to do the undetermined because if we do have the patient's record, we should be able to determine what is going on. And then again, our adverse effect and underdosing. Okay, so underdosing, we talked about that. With the underdosing, again, you go ahead and code what's wrong with the patient first. The drug with the underdosing, And then you're going to put the Z code in there for patient's non-compliance with the medication. All right, so we talked about the table. I think that is going to wrap up this section. Again, if anybody has any questions over this chapter, just please let me know.